My name is Gracie Smith from the Victor FFA chapter in the beautiful state of Montana. Are my judges ready?
Yes.
We have a big problem. The United States is losing 175 acres of farmland every hour due to urbanization. This scary statistic, combined with a growing worldwide population of 9.8 billion people by 2050, means that agriculturalists are going to have a very difficult time feeding the population in the future. There are many creative ideas that have been suggested to meet this challenge, but my personal favorite is vertical farming. Vertical farming is the practice of commercial food production in a vertical building, from skyscrapers to warehouses. Inside a vertical farm, rows of plants are stacked on top of each other, creating what looks like a wall of green. There are LED lights that provide a spectrum of ultraviolet rays similar to that of the sun. Instead of soil, the hydroponic or aeroponic water systems provide all of the nutrients that the plants need. The top of the building collects rainwater and condensation, then uses gravity to distribute it to the plants below. The vertical farm was coined by Columbia University professor Dixon Despommier, who wrote, "The vertical farm, feeding the world in the 21st century," on the idea of farming up. This idea created excitement and vertical farm startups began popping up all over. Some with success, but others not. So what are the advantages of vertical farming? Because it's indoors, all elements are able to be controlled, and the growing area is twice as productive as traditional outdoor farming methods. This means no more hailstorms to harm crops. And because insects can be controlled, there's no need for pesticides, reducing costs and making organic farming that much easier. Climate can also be controlled to make growth periods longer and enable year-round growing opportunities. According to David Rosenberg, chief executive and co-founder of AeroFarms, on average, we're growing in 16 days what otherwise takes 30 days in a field, using 95% less water, about 50% less fertilizers, and 0 pesticides, herbicides, and fungicides. This boosts income because consumers are willing to pay higher prices for food that is organic, locally grown, and pesticide-free. Some detractors point out the disadvantage that vertical farms use a lot of energy for temperature control, lighting, and watering, and that alternative energy methods barely even make a dent in these costs. However, there are a growing number of creative approaches, like using glass panels for walls, automation, and energy-conserving LED lighting. It is my belief that traditional energy costs will be reduced with rapidly improving new technologies. Other drawbacks to vertical farming are found in scale. Growing grains or melons, for example, would be very difficult and not worth the return on investment. For now, traditional methods are best for these large-scale crops, and vertical farming should concentrate on more perishable table products. Savings in transportation costs alone can offset any additional overhead and energy use. Usually, the rural areas where we traditionally grow our food are hundreds of miles away from the urban areas that we ship it to. Having farms closer in proximity to the distribution sites in our major cities will cut back the cost of transportation as well as carbon emissions. Rooftop gardens are also considered a vertical farming method. According to a 2008 New York Times report, in their city alone, there are 944 million square feet of rooftop space available for planting. Whether it's community garden plots rented by different people or an entire rooftop farm cultivated by one person, this method makes fresh food available the day it was harvested. Rooftop gardens give the potential for entire apartment complexes to have a farmer's market in their building and to help eliminate urban food deserts. Rooftop gardens also give people a chance to gain a better understanding of agriculture and to know where their food comes from. These gardens give kids the opportunity to grow their own food, learn to make healthy eating choices, and possibly become inspired to pursue an agricultural career. The biggest drawback of vertical farming today comes down to one problem: money. The startup of a vertical farm is very expensive. With the cost of land, architecture, engineering, and labor involved, it's no wonder vertical farm startups struggle and haven't been as successful as previously hoped. Not to mention that on average, it takes farms 7 years before they become profitable. But one company thinks that they have it figured out. Plenty, a startup company out of Silicon Valley, is in the process of finishing a 100,000 square foot building just outside of Seattle, Washington. The farm is expected to produce 4.5 million pounds of produce annually. They then plan to expand and build a farm outside of every major city with a population of over 1 million people. So what makes Plenty so sure that they will succeed? For starters, recently they received a lot of investment money. In fact, the largest agricultural investment ever of $200 million. Plenty is also developing artificial intelligence to help monitor and find the best growth, irrigation, and harvest methods. Plenty claims that they have the most efficient method of farming, using automation to reduce labor costs and being able to grow up to 350 times the produce per acre using 1% of the water used in traditional outdoor farming methods. Plenty also claims that their produce tastes better. They've received incredible reviews from the restaurants that buy their food for the flavor and variety of their produce. Shipping over shorter distances helps to keep food fresher and allows Plenty to grow heirloom and exotic varieties that cannot handle long transportation or storage time. There is so much potential in these progressive farming methods in the US and across the world. When compared to traditional farming methods, vertical farms conserve more water, energy, and yield up to 8 times the harvest per square foot. If we continue to think outside the box, or should I say inside the building, then we will be better prepared for our future of feeding the world. Thank you.
Gracie, there have been a lot of problems lately with E. coli on lettuce. Do you see that being a potential issue with indoor growing?
When it comes to E. coli outbreaks, you're mainly looking at the fact that the farms that have issues with these outbreaks aren't able to control the purity of their water source. In vertical farms, it's an extremely controlled environment. In fact, when I was researching for this speech during the summer, I wanted to be able to tour a nearby vertical farm in the state of Wyoming. Upon requesting a tour at this farm, they turned me down because they are so intense about their biosecurity that they're not able to have any sort of visitors. Even their employees have to suit up in the equivalent of a hazmat suit. So no, in the case of vertical farms, generally outbreaks of E. coli or other disease are able to be controlled very easily.
Doesn't indoor grown produce lose some of the nutritional value that comes from the sun?
That's a great question, and one that I was able to have the opportunity to ask Dr. Krishna Namali at Purdue University when I traveled to the national convention. Dr. Namali was able to clarify this for me because I wasn't able to find any research online. Nutritional value is not affected by the sun, and even if it were, the LED lights that are used in vertical farms replicate identically the rays from the sun. The nutritional value of the produce is given by the roots and by what it absorbs through its roots. In this case, in vertical farms, that's the nutrients that are in the hydroponic or the aeroponic water systems that are used. So the nutritional value, in fact, in vertical farms is able to be boosted. For example, when you look at tomatoes, some forms of tomatoes have been bred over time to be able to handle longer transportation time, whereas other varieties of tomatoes that are heirloom and exotic varieties are able to be grown in vertical farms because they don't have to be transported as far. Therefore, those tomatoes that have been bred out over time to be able to take the transportation have a little bit less nutrient value rather than the traditional and the heirloom varieties that have a higher nutrient value that hasn't been lost over time.
Thank you.